Hello, Doctor Who fans, and welcome to our review for this week's episode known as Lucky Day. It's your lucky day, as they kept saying a lot in the episode. It seems to be a apparent phrase, isn't it? The whole "it's your lucky day" common phrase in our day in society. This episode, I have to say, twists to it, especially given the trailer was. I guess you could say the trailer was kind of giving us like a different perspective of what we thought the episode was going to be, and then the reality of the episode is completely different to how the trailer's perpetrating, because it was very cleverly done how the trailer made us think one thing and then turns out it was the other. Let's get into tracks here. So mainly this episode of course began pretty much the evening of New Year's Eve into the transition to New Year's Day 2007. You could tell because of the fireworks in London. Obviously, well, it's kind of like their sort of, I think they tried to sort of was the 2007 fireworks, and they did, mind you, they did show a bit of footage from, I believe, that firework display that went out at the time by the BBC. I know the camera angles were a little different to what they were back then, because if you look on YouTube, you'll notice that they had cameras in a different angle from what they were showing in this episode. So it wasn't exactly to what the actual TV version was. It was kind of like this sort of Doctor Who, like a newer take of that 2007 firework display, which I think was really cool that they did. They featured it, and of course we see the Doctor and Belinda arrive on Earth in 2007. And obviously kind of we weren't going to see much of the Doctor and Belinda because of that whole plot line of, they're trying to get back to Earth, and that became very true for the Ruby Sunday stuff of the episode, even though there was a flashback, what appears to be one of the adventures the Doctor and Ruby had before she left the TARDIS. At least they were dealing with the Sheikahs, which are the enemies in this episode. It turns out that was a flashback adventure. They had a flashback adventure dealing with them in the past. So obviously, Ruby Sunday remembers them. Doctor also has had battles with them as well, with her. So that's really interesting that we found out that they had encounters before Ruby Sunday left Doctor at the end of Empires of Death. So this must have been one of their ventures before the whole Sutek stuff that was going on. But of course, a year has passed. We're seeing Ruby now. Obviously, she encounters Conrad, because obviously we do follow Conrad as a boy getting the 50p coin from the Doctor, and then he was trying to tell his mum, "Oh my God, I saw the Doctor," but her mother's doesn't seem too thrilled about her son. And then obviously you'll notice he made up that whole lie during the episode that, my mother died and everything, when it turns out her mother didn't. She just went to France to get away from him. Talk about raising your child and then choosing to bugger off to France afterwards. I tell you something, that's more of like a dysfunctional family to me. If you're really that desperate to leave your own child in London and then go to France, then yeah, there's something wrong with you. And obviously now he's kind of independent. He kind of just raised him. It kind of feels like he raised himself for most of his life, and he must have had this whole hatred built up because of the fact that his mother wasn't really there much of his sort of teenagehood, I guess you could say, because she just kind of left him on his own to figure out what he wanted to do. But I mean, that's kind of how we looked at it, because I mean, that's how the story seems to apply. But he decides to make a podcast because of that encounter with the Doctor, and then of course he finally meets Ruby Sunday, and they have there was this moment where they have that sort of like spark in there, even though you'll notice as time went on, he kind of sort of feints, sort of pretend to have that, have these sort of feelings for her, as you'll notice as the sort of relationship builds up. And then of course Ruby explains about the Sheikahs to him, because obviously he encountered them when he went into sort of abandoned place where the Doctor and Ruby first met them. But and then of course they have this sort of romantic thing going on, and then eventually they go to this, I guess you could say, this sort of weekend away village. I'm not too sure where the village was. It must have been they never really said where the village was. It would have, when they do a different location, usually it will tell you on the screen where what their sort of location there. They didn't really mention. I guess it was somewhere country. That's all I could say to that. We get to the bar, and of course you see Ruby's obviously happy because she might have a boyfriend finally. Turns out that the lights were flickering, and they realized that, oh my God, Shriekers might coming out and stuff. And then she was like, oh my God, the Shriekers are here, and she was trying to tell you that she's obviously Ruby's trying to come to terms with like what happened within the last year, the fact that she was dealing with Sutek. She was trying to figure out who her mother is, and like lucky she was able to find that out, as we saw in Empire of Death. So, she's trying to come to terms with everything that's happened in the last year when she was with the Doctor, and obviously now she's trying to put herself back to normal now. Yeah, that storyline obviously is still technically ongoing, whether she's trying to come to terms with. Yeah, she was trying to be brave there with the Shriekers, but it turns out the Shriekers were being like normal human beings, and yeah, this is where the twist comes in. Friends of Conrad, because it turns out that Conrad was actually putting on a fake friendship or romance with Ruby just to have a t-shirt underneath saying think tank. I believe it's sort of, I mean, I don't know whether it's 100% accurate, but because obviously there is a museum called Think Tank, so I thought, okay, could it be related to that? But it doesn't look like it is. I think it might be a completely different thing, what I was thinking of at first. Yeah, I mean, it's mainly because of the name, made me think, oh, it could be related to Brigadier and the Doctor went to the Think Tank and first met the robot back in the Fourth Doctor's first story. Would have made sense why they did that. It might have been an Easter egg. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was. Nevertheless, it turns out what he was really trying to do was trying to expose Unit. Yeah, so he basically led Ruby on just to get Unit to show up, think that there were monsters, to find out that he had friends, trying to pretend to be the monsters just so he can try and expose Unit as being the enemies of the Earth, pretty much, and try to do this whole conspiracy theory against them and try to get people to believe lies about Unit. And yeah, kind of one of those type of people who will say lie. And it's kind of funny they're doing an episode like this mainly because of what's going on in the world, especially if you're looking at America type of thing. It's kind of interesting they're doing what they're doing now in this story, and kind of does somewhat relate to what's happening in the States in some way. But it's really, I mean, I was kind of surprised, to be fair. I thought he was going to be one of these people who was going to be generally nice to Ruby. Turns out he's a bit of an ass to Ruby, and I really, I don't really care for him anymore. He just stabbed us in the back like that. But it was just very villainous, very, very villainous for him to do what he did. And then, of course, it was because of that he tried to he got everyone believing, got people throwing eggs at Unit car when Ruby was trying to go to Kate Stewart, and then obviously she was crying over the fact that Conrad was doing this, trying to get people buy into it. And then, of course, from that, of course, she decided to go to the Unit offices, and then it turns out one of the security guards, or the people who was behind the security, I guess the journalist A security guard Unit hired, turns out he was a part of Conrad's plan, because he turns out he was attacking the Unit soldiers just so he could get in to the Unit office. All of a sudden, Conrad decided, oh yeah, I don't need you anymore. Basically dead, and to the point that he's probably made it alive at this point, because he said he was fighting for his life, may have not made it, because we never really knew what happened to him after he got took down by Conrad. Nevertheless, he grabbed one of the Unit guns, he went up the elevator, he got to Kate Stewart, and also some of the members of Unit who were up, and obviously he tried to put the camera on just to really try to show the real truth within the offices of Unit. And then, of course, he even went as far as to basically insult Kate Stewart's own father, the Brigadier. You go deep, Kate Stewart. She will clap back at you. Talk about this woman's father. She is going to make her your bitch. Basically, that's exactly what she literally just like. You know what? You want to talk about my dad? I'm gonna release the creature from that cage, come and make it go and get. And literally, he was trying to fight his fear over that. And then, of course, Ruby decides to shock the enemy. Then Conrad tries to pretend to like say, "Oh, please save me, please save." And then Ruby just shocks the enemy, and then he was like, "Oh, thank you." And then Ruby's like, "Go to hell." I'm glad she said that, because Ruby hated his guts after what he did. And then luckily the creature bited his arm. He's basically going to die of poison, which turns out because as soon as he gets locked into the prison after Ruby's trying to talk to Kate Stewart about the fact that she's hoping the Doctor will show up. We all know that's not going to be for a little while because of that plot line of the Doctor trying to get Belinda back to Earth, and obviously he can't land on Earth because of some weird thing that's trying to prevent him from getting to Earth. So hopefully there's going to be a way for him to get to Ruby's son once we get to the final 2 episodes. Find out how he does it hopefully soon. Once we get to Conrad's prison, he gets transported into the TARDIS. Well, you could see from the Doctor's look at his face, he was pissed. He was pissed with Cameron because of the fact that the fact that he heard what happened to Ruby, because he probably got a phone call from Ruby, or I guess you could say he sensed that what he did to Ruby because he saw Comrade did to try and expose to Unit, and then he felt the fact that he upset Ruby. So it's interesting he knew that this was happening, even though he hasn't had any proper contact with Ruby. I think he kind of something was up. Obviously, from that moment, the fact that he said plenty of people trying to do good, and then there are cowards like you, and then the fact that he tried to, and then Comrade tried to literally talk down on the Doctor, and then he says like, "Take me back to my prison and get off my world," sort of insult, and then the Doctor just took him back to his prison, and then all of a sudden, turns out the prison guard who was walking by, turns out it was Mrs. Flood pretending to be a police guard with the keys to try and get him to escape. So it turns out Mrs. Flood is responsible for Comrade's potential escape from prison because she basically let the guy free. So now I'm starting to wonder whether Mrs. Flood is going to be she's going to use Comrade as part of her plan to go at the Doctor. Maybe. Wouldn't be surprising if that's what's happening here, because it's kind of funny how she decides to, why would you let someone so villainous like him free and scare Ruby Sunday when you know if he's a villain, he needs to be put down, but yet something's messed up with Mrs. Flood there, the fact that to let somebody like him out. Either way, it was crazy. Lots of twists and turns. I like to be hoped because of the whole Unit stuff that the whole like, oh, Comrade was trying to spread lies about Unit. I wonder if Mrs. Flood is going to use that as a weapon against Unit at some point. Maybe she'll use that as a way to sort of trap Unit when it comes to her plan. Maybe I'm starting to think that maybe Mrs. Flood's going to use that to her advantage. If that ends up happening, considering this is Mrs. Flood. She seems to be studying a lot of things as of late. She likes when the Doctor's not around. Like, she's trying to study for her bigger plan that she's going to be doing later in the season. So I'm starting to believe that this is all part of her plan, is study everything that's happening and then use it to your advantage against the Doctor. Mainly this story, we all thought it was about the Shriekers. Turns out it wasn't about the Shriekers. It was all about person's desire to destroy Unit. That's pretty much what this story was all about. One person's desire to go clap back at the world and say, you know what, screw people who don't care about me. I want to be valued. I'm gonna mess up some company's existence just so I can get my voice heard. That's literally how I feel like this story is being played out. And to be fair, I feel like there's a real world message go alongside this, and I wouldn't be too surprised if there is, but I just haven't really figured out what that message is. It's there, so that's all I'm going to say. The story, and then of course we do have the trailer for the story of the engine, which I'm still convinced this is all about Nigeria, all about thing that Ncuti Gatwa wanted when he first came aboard. Basically, if you go back to some of the videos where Ncuti Gatwa was talking about the series and Billy Gibson and talking about them being cast in the role, he did talk about the fact that he would like to visit a Nigerian, go into Nigeria to meet a ancient Nigerian god or goddess. I feel like next week's story is going to be Russell making that dream come true for Ncuti because of the fact that the episode pretty much set in Nigeria. I feel like we're heading towards that prophecy next week, especially with the things that they're showing and the fact that it takes place in the barbershop. I find very interesting because that barbershop does look a little 70s from its outlook. I don't know about you. I don't know if that's just me, but I feel like it does look kind of like the sort of barbershops you would have seen in the 70s. If you go back at videos, barbershops in the 70s, it kind of does similar to that from the inside. But then also at the same time, they have a secret door and it leads to this. Do see a shot of the Nigerian spider god for this story. I mean, I don't think it's going to talk for sure because I feel like it's going to do something. We just don't know how. Finally got to meet a Nigerian god. He finally got to face as the 15th Doctor, which is something that he really wanted to have as the 15th Doctor. So that's good to see that Ncuti Gatwa was finally getting his wish. Let me know in the comment section what you make of the story Lucky Day. How did you feel about the twists and turns of the story, and especially Comrade? Are you feeling very angry about that character? I feel very, very disappointed in the character. I was hoping he was going to be one of these really cool guys we're going to see. Like, he's going to support UNIT and support Ruby. Turns out he was just being a right ass to Ruby, and I hated him. I thought he was an asshole for doing it. Nevertheless, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will my Who Universe news during the week, where we'll have the consistent figures and the overnight figures for Lucky Day, and of course synopsises coming out for Interstellar Song as we get ready for that Eurovision, as we start building up towards that Eurovision theme to Who's story, that story is going to be so much fun, isn't it? The fact that Ryland and Graham Norton are going to be on Doctor Who just hours before the Eurovision Song Contest, which, by the way, did announce recently that Ncuti Gat was going to be the jury representation that represented the UK as the jury in Eurovision. So big ups to him for getting that role before the end of the series. So that's really... I'll get you all in my next Who Universe news, and see you then.